If you're a physical therapist and ever had a patient during an evaluation, say, let's just try a few visits and see how it goes. I'm going to show you in this video why most patients are hesitant to commit to a full plan of care and what great providers are actually doing in order to fix it. Hi, my name is Dr. Robbie Woelkers. I'm a physical therapist and co-owner here at Rehab CEOs. Previously, we had 3 physical therapy locations that we grew in under 18 months. And then I sold my shares back to my partner in 2021. And now we run an 8-figure agency helping physical therapy practice owners grow and scale their clinics without more of their time. So in this video, I'm going to teach you guys 3 things. Number 1 is I'm going to show you exactly why most patients are hesitant to commit to a full plan of care. Number 2 is I'm going to walk you guys through what the true objection is. And then number 3, I'm going to walk you guys through how to overcome it. Okay. So the first thing that I want you guys to be able to do is understand what the real problem is. Okay. So what most providers hear is I'm going to try a few visits and then we're going to just see how it goes. And what providers think is that they need to be able to prove themselves. They're going to make sure that they show up with all this value and, they're going to cram everything into the initial eval in the first couple of sessions. And honestly, it's really stressful, because providers feel like they need to get patients better within the first, second, or even third visits, right? And that causes a lot of pressure, but more importantly, it actually stresses their confidence. Because if they're not able to perform, their confidence will start to go down, and then the patient doesn't continue, and it's this weird feedback loop. But that's not the reason why patients are saying, let's try a few visits and let's see how it goes. The real reason is they don't actually believe that it will work for them yet. Okay. So they're looking for proof that this is going to work for them. Okay. So that is going to be the real problem. And honestly, guys, the biggest thing that you need to be aware of and why this is dangerous is because a patient who says, I'm going to go ahead and try a few visits, they're just not committed. And when I say they're not committed to the timeline, they're not committed to the duration, the frequency, and more importantly, they are not committed to the outcome. Okay. So when you look at it like this, people are waiting to decide. They're usually looking for a reason not to continue. Okay. It's not a reason to continue. They are looking for a reason not to continue. So one of the things that you need to understand and your team needs to understand is this thing called the Trust Trinity. Okay. So the Trust Trinity is actually really, really cool, because when you're doing an evaluation, patients need to align with 3 things. And if you get them to align with these 3 things, you will significantly increase the amount of patients who commit to their plan of cares. So thing number 1 is they actually have to believe in you. Okay. And what I mean by this is they actually have to believe that you, the provider, will actually work for them. Now, you're a physical therapist. You went to school for 7 years. You have CEUs. You have experience. You have all of the accolades. It's pretty easy to be able to align with the fact that they actually believe that you know what you're doing. Okay. Number 2 is they have to believe in your process. Now, I'm going to show you guys in a little bit how to make sure that people actually believe in your process. But a fun fact is that because you guys are slamming Google reviews and testimonials, they could see that your process at least works for other people. So if they go online and they go on your Google business profile, whatever that looks like, and they type in like best physical therapy near me, you guys show up, they're going to be like, wow, these guys must be great because they have so many reviews. The subconscious mind is saying like, we believe in them and we believe that their process will work for others. And the last thing that we need to be able to do is we need to make sure that they actually believe that it will work for them. So once you're able to get them to buy in and subscribe to you, your process, and will it work for them, you will start to overcome the objection. Let's just try a few visits and see how it goes. Okay. This is what's known as the Trust Trinity. So further recapping what this looks like is the Trust Trinity is going to consist of patients must believe in 3 things. They must believe in you, they must believe in your process, but more importantly, they must believe that their outcome, right? They must believe it will work for them. And when I say that it will work for them, they need to believe that the time requirement, the financial requirement, right? The time, energy, sacrifice, all of it will work for them. But more importantly, your plan of care. They need to make sure that the plan of care, whatever you outline, will get them from wherever they are in pain to the payoff. And if you don't do that, they're not going to believe that this will work, and they're not going to show up for their appointments, and they're not going to get a result, which, by the way, that's not good for them, but it's also not good for you, your confidence, your providers, and your clinic's reputation. Okay. So that is going to be what's the Trust Trinity here and what we are going to be looking at today. So big idea number one is we need to be able to figure out what is the patient's problem and then what is their payoff. So it's the first thing that we need to do to understand, like, will this work for them? Okay. So if you guys have ever gone to PT school, we know that the biggest thing that we're trying to do is, like, are we going to treat, or are we going to treat and refer, or are we going to refer? So what this looks like, the problem, the payoff. So when a patient comes into the clinic, the first thing that we need to understand is what is the problem that we are trying to solve. Okay. So first, we're going to go over physical. Number two is we're going to figure out how is this affecting their participation. And then we need to figure out how is this affecting them personally. Okay. So these are what we want to call a level 3 conversation. We need to be able to have a conversation with a patient, not just superficial, but deep. Okay. Because we have to kind of peel back the layers a little bit and figuring how this problem is affecting them personally. So how does this sound? Right. So if a patient's coming into the clinic and they have right shoulder pain, or let's just say shoulder pain, you would say, hey, is it your right shoulder or is it your left shoulder? It's your right shoulder. Is it the front? Is it the side? Is it the back? Where does it hurt specifically? They're like, well, it's my front of my shoulder and kind of out to the side. And you'll then ask, okay, well, does it hurt when you lift your arm? Does it hurt all the way at the top? Like, what activities are you currently restricted from doing, or what ranges are you, currently affected from doing? And they'll be like, well, when I raise my arm, it kind of pinches a little bit, and then it feels better as it go up. Okay. Now, so, when patients have pain reaching overhead, they also have issues with overhead activities, reaching in cabinets, possibly driving, also reaching behind their back hurts and sleeping. Just curious, how is your shoulder pain showing up for you regarding activities and participation? They'll tell you, well, I'm unable to work, I'm unable to sleep, I'm unable to play pickleball, whatever. Okay. And then you're going to say, well, I know for me personally, when I typically have pain, and I had shoulder pain in the past, I'm kind of irritable, agitated, and sometimes even a little depressed. I'm just curious, how is this shoulder pain affecting you personally? Okay. So now when we're looking at it like that, we have gone from physical participation down here to the personal level. And now what we could do is, once we're here, we want to dig in the dirt a little bit, right? Dirt just stands for duration, impact, root cause, trigger moment. So duration, impact, root cause, trigger moment. So what that will sound like is, well, thank you for sharing that. And I'm so sorry to hear. How long has that been going on for? So now all of a sudden we're having a conversation about how their pain is affecting them personally, versus most people, what they do is they'll say it's my right shoulder and be like, well, how long has that been going on for? Right. And how does that impact you? What's the root cause? And when did you decide to get help? Right. But you're talking superficial. Now we're bringing it down to a deeper level. So how that would sound is, well, how long has that been going on for? And just curious, you're saying how that affects you personally, like you're not able to, play pickleball and play with your friends, but how else is that impacting you? And do you know what the root cause is? And when did you decide, like, enough is enough, I need to get support, maybe even go see a professional like myself? So what do we do there is we say, how long has this been going on for? Duration, right? How else is this impacting you, right? We're trying to dig a little bit deeper here, right? Dig in the dirt. Do you know what the root cause is? And then when did you decide enough is enough? I need to be able to go and get some support. That is called a trigger moment, right? So we have duration, we have impact, we have root cause and trigger moment. But more importantly, we have them all down here on the personal level. Now what we're going to do is, once we mention to them, we say, okay, right? I think we're both in agreement that nothing changes if nothing changes. Now we got to kind of build them up a little bit. So how this is going to sound is we are going to say, well, what have you tried? Right? What have you tried? What did you like about that? What would you have changed? And what's the goal? And is that the short-term goal or is that the long-term goal? And now all of a sudden we're figuring out what the payoff is. Okay. So really cool. So now all of a sudden we go down deep a little bit. And now we're doing this thing called stretching the gap. So when you're in an evaluation, by the way, this only takes like a minute or two, right? Is your right shoulder or left shoulder? Boom. How is that affecting your participation? I know for me, and then I know for me personally, just curious how that's showing up for you. How long has that been going on for? What's the impact? What's the root cause? And when did you decide enough is enough? I might need to go get some help. And what have you tried already? What do you like about that? By the way, when someone says I've tried PT and you're a PT, but right? But it's just like, what did you like? Well, they were close to home. They were okay. What would you change? Well, I wish they were more one-on-one. I saw multiple providers. The insurance ran out. Gotcha. Okay. And then what's the goal? And is that the short term? Is that the long term? And here's the secret sauce. Okay. So once you're up here at the goal, the payoff, you can then ask them like, hey, what would it mean to you to achieve that goal? And have you put any thought into what would happen if you don't? Okay. So that is the first thing that we want to be able to do is we need to be able to figure out what the problem is. We need to be able to stretch the gap on this thing and figure out what is the actual payoff for the patient. Okay. So that is step number one. Now, what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to just recap and understand stretching the gap. Okay. So the current state is they have pain every morning. They can't play with their kids. They can't exercise. They're frustrated, right? But the desired state is they want to run again. They want to play golf again. They want to travel without pain. They want to sleep through the night, right? So the bigger the gap here, the bigger the motivation. And that's where I see a lot of people struggle is they meet people just on the physical level, specifically during the eval, they don't go deep enough because now there's no motivation. We need to be able to start with why. And why doesn't happen at the physical level. Why happens all the way down here at the personal level. We need to meet people at their identity. Because I have shoulder pain, because I'm not able to do these things, I'm not showing up the way I want to as a father. Because I have back pain, because I'm not able to do these activities, I'm not able to show up as I want as a mother, as a sister, as a coworker, as a colleague, whatever. So now all of a sudden we're talking to people on the identity level, the personal level versus physical. Everybody cool with that? Okay. So that's really, really important. Probably the most important part of getting people to commit to their plan of care because we need to be able to connect it to their life, right? We want to be able to sell the future, right? Not the features. In order to do that, we need to make sure that it matters. So connect it to their life. Why is this important? What happens if nothing changes? What will it look like when this is fixed? I want to future pace them. I want them to imagine what it would look like X amount of weeks from now once this is resolved, right? They don't have to deal with it. Oh my gosh, this would be amazing, right? So the goal isn't information. The goal is to make sure we connect with them emotionally, okay? So then big idea number 2 is patients need a map, okay? So if you get in the car, and you just start driving and, your husband and wife kind of looks over at you, or excuse me, your husband and wife looks at you, or and they're like, where are we going? And you're like, I don't know. Right. So all of a sudden, like when you have all this potential energy, right? So people are excited now. They're like, wow, we have all this potential energy, but you don't actually like point them in the right direction and tell them to go this way. And you don't tell them how long it's going to take and what's the energy and effort in this. People start to get a little bit frustrated, okay? So what we want to be able to do here, remember, right? We don't want to just try a few visits. We want them to commit to the full plan of care. Patients need a map, right? People do not commit to uncertainty. So one of the things that I want you guys to always understand is that if people are confused, right? A confused buyer never takes action. They need to have clarity. And communication is the bridge between unclear, right, or confused and actual clarity. So in order for us to do that, we need to be able to create a map for them, more like a roadmap. So you're going to do a physical examination, right? So just PT 101, you'll do your physical eval. You're going to do test, treat, retest, which basically looks like this. So let's say we'll go back to the shoulder pain example and we'll say, go ahead and lift your arm up. Like, that's about as good as I can do. Okay, it's better now. It was pinchy, kind of like mid-range. Yes. Okay, we'll go ahead and lay on the table. So maybe you do some glenohumeral moves. Maybe you get in there and you work on the bicep long head a little bit. Maybe you go ahead and flip them over and work on the posterior rotator cuff. And then you have them sit back on the table and you say, go ahead and lift your arm again. They lift it up. They're like, oh, well, that's a little bit better. And you say, okay, well, where does it still hurt? They're like, well, it's kind of like a little tight here. I'm definitely feeling it up here in the neck. Okay, so go ahead and lay back down. Maybe do a first rib mode. Maybe do some stuff with the tricep. Maybe we do some stuff with the lat, right? So now all of a sudden they go up. They're like, oh, that's better. Okay, cool. And they're like, it's still kind of, and now all of a sudden maybe do some like, sternoclavicular stuff. You work on the AC just to kind of go, work on the scapular thoracic. And now all of a sudden they're like, wow, this is amazing, right? So what do we do there? We did a physical examination, and then we did something called test, treat, retest. Okay, so we want to test it, we want to treat it, we want to retest it, we want to treat it again, we want to retest it, we want to treat it again, we want to retest it. And the reason for this is because we are trying to figure out where their pain falls when it comes to the phases of rehab. Okay, so what do I mean by this? So the phases of rehab, we're trying to figure out, is this a bone? Is this a joint? Is this a tendon? Is this a ligament? Is this a muscle, right? Is it a nerve? Is it something else going on, right? So if you're a physical therapist and if it's inert tissue, right? So if we got bones, we got tissues, we got ligaments, right? We can work with that stuff, muscles, nerves, right? If it's something else going on, then we might have to refer them out, right? Because we are trying to figure out, are we going to treat this? Are we going to treat and refer? Are we going to refer? Okay. So once we're able to figure out the physical examination, right? And then once we do test, treat, retest, now we got to be able to go through phases of rehab. So what does this look like, right? So in the phases of rehab, it's going to show up like this. We need to be able to meet them at the level that they're at, which is going to be, they are in some, let's just draw. There's going to be 4 levels here. So how many levels are there? There's going to be 4, okay? Level number 1 is going to be known as pain, okay? So these are just your typical like PT 101, right? Phases of rehab. We're going to show them where we're going. So the first thing that we would need to understand is that patients are going to be in pain, okay? Some level of pain. Now, my belief system is that most PTs, specifically acute, subacute injuries, most PTs could get a patient out of pain within the first 6 visits or less, okay? Now, a lot of patients or a lot of providers put a lot of pressure on themselves to get people out of pain because that, to most providers, is like, oh, if I get them out of pain, like they're going to be happy. It's just like, well, no, once we get them out of pain, there's more to the equation than just getting them out of pain. So, and when I say pain, you guys might work with some like vestibular patients, and I'll just say that problem, like what problem do they have? The next thing is we got to get them into this phase called priming. Okay, so priming. And priming basically means strength, mobility, and flexibility, also known as the root cause of the issue. Okay, so in root causes, we all know this could be at the site, or it could be above, or it could be below. And when I say priming, is that whatever's weak, we make it stronger. Whatever's tight, we make it more flexible. Whatever's stable, we make it more mobile. Whatever's mobile, we make it more stable. You guys get the idea. So this is going to be known as the priming phase. So first, we want to reduce pain. We want to improve range of motion. We want to reduce the problem. And then we want to be able to strengthen it. We want to be able to make it more flexible. We want to do core stabilization, whatever the goal is here. But more importantly, we want to be able to fix the root cause of the issue. Okay. So then once we fix the root cause of the issue, we could then get to the performance phase, right? And then also, a lot of times this is going to be the payoff. This is what most patients want to be able to do, right? This is where you get them back to pickleball, you get them back to, working, you get them back to, recreational activity or sport. They're excited. They're like, this is what I signed up for, which is awesome. And then the last level of this thing is going to be something I like to call prevent, right? Prevention. And so some people will call this like performance enhancement, or specifically if you're working with professional athletes and stuff like that, it's like, well, you want to prevent or you want to improve, right? So it's just like more there's performance and there's performance enhancement, right? It's just like because we want to be able to like hit personal best, and we want to be able to, not just return a sport, but we want to dominate, right? So a lot of our patients, though, specifically general orthopedic, will just be prevention, right? We don't want this to come back again. Okay. And the problem is where most people are getting patients like 6 visit packages or 10, they get the patient out of pain. And then a little bit in the priming phase, the patient drops off and then it just comes back again. So they didn't get to performance or prevention. And that's an issue. Okay. So when we're looking at this thing, and I want you guys to be aware of this. Okay. So pain is actually a really high value because most patients want to be able to get out of pain. So they put a lot of value in getting out of pain. They also put a lot of value in getting out of performance, or actually getting to performance. And the weird part about this is priming, there's actually decreased value here because this means work. And most people don't want to sacrifice the time, energy to be able to get the results. So they want to get out of pain. They want to increase their performance, but they don't necessarily want to put in the work. Okay. So that is where we need to be able to explain to patients during the evaluation that we're going to be able to get you out of pain pretty quickly if it is something we could treat here at PT. But then that's where the fun starts. Okay. So if you just want to try a couple sessions, well, the first couple of sessions, we are going to do some stuff to be able to reduce your pain. Now, if you're just trying a couple sessions, what's going to happen is you're not able to get through the actual rehab portion where you fix the root cause of the issue. Then it's just going to come back and then you're just going to be frustrated. So once you're out of pain, don't think that physical therapy is over. That's where PT will actually begin. Because once I'm able to get you out of pain, we are then able to fix the root cause, and then we're able to get you back into insert goal, right? And I think that that's more where your focus should be, right? It's just like, we don't just take amoxicillin and they prescribe 2 a day for 14 days or whatever it is. And you're like, let me just try a couple and see how it goes. Or people will say like, let me try to diet and see if I lose weight, or let me try to quit smoking, or let me try to quit drinking. Right. There's actually really cool research that was done where if you actually switch the way that your language pattern is, will get you to commit more fully, I guess you would say. And what I mean by that is that, let's just say someone's trying to quit smoking and they said, no, thanks, I'm trying to quit, right? They have a high failure rate of trying to quit when they say, I'm trying to quit, versus when someone's like, do you want a cigarette? And they're like, no, thank you, I don't smoke. Or no, thank you, I don't eat fast food. Or no, thank you, I don't drink, right? So when you identify as a person who doesn't do the activity, right? Or you identify as the person who will do the activity, then you'll do the appropriate action, which is pretty cool. Okay. So that's why I want you guys to understand that people want to get out of pain. They want to get to performance, but there's this weird thing in the middle, which is why most people drop off between visits number 4 and visits number 8. It's a weird little thing that happens, and I just want to make sure that you guys are aware of it. So once you show them where they are, right, patients need to understand like what's wrong, why is it happening, what is causing it, and why hasn't it improved, right? This is where you could actually pull up like some anatomy figures. You could pull up like, we used to do 3D Medical, which was an app. We would explain to them exactly what's going on, and their mind would be blown. And they would say, no one's ever showed me this before. So if you're hearing those kind of things during an evaluation, you know you are on the right track, okay? So when we're looking at this thing is we want to then present the plan, right? Instead of saying like, hey, how many visits can you attend, right? We want to be able to say, based on your goal, this is the plan I recommend, okay? And this happens all the time when I hear evaluations, right? So you don't want to ask how many visits can you attend. You want to say, based on the goal, this is the plan that I recommend for you, okay? So if we kind of go back to the, show them where they are going, we want to say like, okay, right? By the way, one of the cool part about sales is if you say it, they could disagree with you. But if they say it, it has to be true. Okay. So when we have the pain phase, we have priming, prevention, and performance. You could simply ask the patient, okay, well, now that you saw that, how long do you think that's going to take? Right? How long do you think it's going to take you to go from where you are right now to be able to return to running, or where you're at right now to be able to return to work? And what's going to happen is you have your number. Let's say you think it's only going to take about 8 weeks. Now, the patient could either say less than, or they can go ahead and say more than, right? So let's go ahead and let's do like a more than, right? A little bit easier. They're like, I don't know. I think it's going to take about 12 weeks. So how you would present that is be like, actually, you're right. It would take about 12 weeks. if you did it on your own. But the goal here is to go further and faster with support. So actually, if you attend your sessions, you do exactly what I say, you commit to your home program, it will only take 8 weeks. How awesome is that, right? So what did I do there? I slowed down tonality and I got them to give me an answer. I know that their answer is less than what I think it's going to take them to get better. And I say, well, actually, if you do it on your own, however, if you want to go further and faster with support, you'll come to your appointments. You'll do exactly what I say. You'll commit to your home program in your sessions. It's only going to take 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever that looks like. Okay. Now, the next example here is they might go ahead and they might have, right, on why here, right? They might say like, oh, it's going to take like 4 visits. and you think it's going to take, right, 4 weeks, right? They might say 4 weeks, or, it might only take like 5 visits or whatever that is. And it's less than what you think. So the way to do that is like, you're absolutely right. It will take only 4 visits, or it will only take 4 weeks, but that's only to get you out of pain, right? So I don't think the goal is to just get you out of pain, right? We just had a conversation that the goal is to actually get you back to running, more specifically, get you back to running that marathon. So it's going to take about 4 weeks to reduce your pain and then start transitioning you into that priming phase, because you don't just go to the gym, start working out and look like Arnold, right? It takes about 6 to 8 weeks for muscles to increase strength. So we're going to get you through that priming phase, and then we'll be able to transition you back to running. So the first phase will take 4 weeks, but total will take about 8 weeks to complete and be able to get you back to running. Does that sound fair? Right? So now all of a sudden it's just like, we agree to get through this phase, but okay, see how powerful that is. Really, really important. So now all of a sudden you show them the frequency, the duration, they know exactly what's going on. And then that is where we want to make sure that we land on big idea number 3, which is going to be perceived likelihood of achievement. So this is the most important concept in the entire video, right? So nothing else is going to matter if they actually don't believe it's going to work for them, okay? So what this is going to look like is patients need to actually believe, like, will this work for you regarding the duration or the timeline? So simple question would be like, hey, do you actually believe that the duration, the timeline will work for you, right? Do you have anything coming up over the next couple of weeks that will prevent you from coming in and achieving what we just discussed? No. Great. And are you confident that you're going to be able to commit to 3 times a week, right? Or, I say 3 times a week, but realistically it's just 2 hours a week, 40-minute sessions, 3 times a week, that's roughly 2 hours out of your week to commit. Oh, no, that's simple. Right? And then maybe do a home exercise or 2 when I give you some homework. No, that's great. Okay. So we want to make sure we get them to say yes for the duration. We want them to say yes for the frequency, commit to that. And then lastly is, do you actually believe what we just mapped out for you will actually help you get to that payoff, that dream outcome, your goal, whatever that looks like. So I need 3 yeses: a yes for duration, right? Time delay, a yes for the frequency, energy and sacrifice, and then a yes for the outcome, right? Which is the perceived likelihood of achievement. Yes, I believe that this is going to work. And the reason we say this is the objection when someone says, let's try a couple of visits and see how it goes, is they have a risk objection. So they want to make sure that this is going to work for them. Now, they need to believe in you, your process, but they also need to believe that, hey, I'm going to be able to commit based on time, based on frequency, based on home program commitment, based on, right? I have a spouse that supports me. I can pay for this financially. We need all of that to be able to align, and then they'll be good to go. Okay. So when we're looking at this thing, that's the 3 beliefs. Do you believe that the timeline will work? Do you believe that frequency can work? And do you believe this plan can actually get your goals? Because realistically, what we're doing is we're trying to build anticipation. So if someone believes that this is going to work and they're focusing on a future outcome that they desire, they're going to take action. People who don't believe it's going to work now have anxiety, right? So anxiety, my definition, is like focusing on a future outcome that you don't desire. So anticipation, they take action. Anxiety, they don't. Anticipation, they schedule out. Anxiety, they just do a couple sessions, right? So that's why we're trying to mitigate risk. So mitigating risk here is your job isn't to eliminate uncertainty. our job is to just reduce it, right? So there's always going to be a risk, but we want to reduce it, right? So all of these are going to increase belief, and belief is part of the state system where we need to have a belief or even faith that this is going to work versus doubt, okay? So similar patient examples, objective findings, early wins, clear roadmap, these are all the things that could really help patients get bought into what you are trying to be able to do, right? So the reframe is, I'll try a few visits and see how it goes. What they're really saying is, I'm not committed, right? Or I'm not convinced that this is going to work for me. So now you know what problem you're actually trying to solve for, okay? So ultimately, the best providers do this. They don't sell visits. They don't sell the features. And I see this all the time, right? Some people will say, like, don't sell the features, sell the future. And if you're able to work with your providers and work with these patients, and the goal here is to be able to sell the future and the outcome, they're going to be committed. You have these personal conversation. The goal is to be able to stretch the gap. And then ultimately, you need to make sure that they line up for duration, frequency, and outcome. And you guys are going to crush it and be fine, okay? So that's where the best providers, in order to fix this, they want to make sure that they have belief in them, they have belief in the process, and they have a belief that the outcome will actually work for the patient. So a couple action steps here so you don't just watch a video and not implement, because I know all you doctors, you love to learn, but you don't like to earn because you think that learning is earning. So don't just watch this video and not take action here. So really quick, some action steps for your next 10 evaluations. So stretch the gap, right? So figure out the problem, go deep on it, and then figure out what the patient's payoff is going to be, right? Right then and there, I would say 90% of the commitment is done. Once you meet a patient on the personal level, they're going to have conversations like, no one's ever showed me this before. Why? Because I got them to open up. You can't close someone if they're not open. So we want to make sure we connect with them on a personal level. Number two is we want to be able to show them the phases of rehab, right? You are on the pain phase. We got to get you to prime. You're on prime. We want to get you to prevent, right? So you got to be able to show them where they're at and where we're trying to take them. And then lastly, we want to make sure that they have access or even assess, right? And they believe that this is going to work, known as perceived likelihood of achievement, right? Hey, do you actually, and I ask them, do you actually believe this is going to work? I feel some hesitancy there, right? Tell me what's showing up for you. So you can walk through that, but we need to make sure they have 100% conviction in what is going to work for them. Great. So hopefully you guys appreciated this and learned a little bit about how to get people to commit during the initial evaluation, and then what to ultimately do to get patients not only to commit, but book out all of their sessions so that they're able to get a result. So if you want to learn more about this type of information, we do have a workshop coming up here in just a couple of days. It's called Transformational Selling. And I'm going to walk you guys exactly through how to do this, not just on evals, but also intake calls as well. So if you guys are interested in joining that workshop, go ahead and click on the link in the description, and then also click the link in the comment section, register, and I'll see you guys on the workshop to get more of these tactics so that you guys can crush your sales process.